father was paralyzed and non-verbal because of the accident, and he basically pledged that he would not only be able to walk that he would be able to stand up and greet his son, but he would also be able to speak to him. Hello, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelim McAleer.
And welcome to the ANN AND PHELIM Scoop. Quite the exciting week this is.
Yes, amazing. On the story, on the podcast today, we'll be talking about obviously the release of the hostages.
Extraordinary.
The apparent end of the war.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We hope.
We have an amazing cat story.
Personal cat story.
We have an amazing interview with Robert Bryce, our energy expert, which is not as amazing as our cat story, I think, though. And Robert would agree with that.
Yes.
We also are going to have a recipe for the as LA gets chilly and the storm comes
look
in.
at this. We're wearing wintry clothes. Yeah, I've got a recipe at the very end of the show, really nice from that we did before, but we think we want to bring it right up to the top again.
So first, the good news.
Very good.
The hostages have been released from Israel. As we were recording this, they've all been released now, and we're getting the footage is coming in. Let's just tell some of the stories, because obviously we did the October 7th play. We went and spoke to people with their amazing stories of resilience, survival,
and heroes who rescued them,
and bereavement. But I always remember hearing other stories. I think we should include that story. But our stories all the stories are amazing.
So Hamas took 250. In total, Hamas took 251 hostages on October 7th, and 160 were returned in ceasefires, and the rest were murdered. But obviously, this last group, which is like about 20 who were released, some of them everyone has kind of come to know, particularly, and these are a few that we were highlighting, was Avatar David, everyone will remember this footage of him, this 24-year-old who was filmed digging his own grave. By the way, kind of hilariously, Greta Thunberg erroneously included him as an example of the deprivation of Palestinians. Well, actually, he, obviously not Palestinian at all. And really, the picture of him, I think, had an incredible effect on people. Extraordinarily sad. And the footage, the footage of him actually caused extraordinary outrage. That footage just came out in I think it was in August.
Yeah, recently.
Very, very recently. People in his family were saying he's a human skeleton. He's been starved to the point where he can be dead at any moment, his brother said. So thanks be to God, he got out.
Here's footage of him with being released into the hands of the IDF. Yeah.
I mean, just extraordinary, and we're so happy to see that happen.
And here's pictures of him with his family, being reunited with his family. Obviously, they're very pleased to see him. So that's. I mean, listen, we're just choosing. Amazing.
There's so many. I mean, there's so many. Every one of the stories is extraordinary. I mean, and obviously the things were happening to the parents and the families who were waiting on their families to come back, particularly actually Bar Cooperstein, 23 years old, who was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. His father had been involved in an accident. I'm not even sure what the accident was, but a catastrophic accident. His father was paralyzed and non-verbal because of the accident, and he basically pledged that he would not only be able to walk that he would be able to stand up and greet his son, but he would also be able to speak to him. And here's the very, very emotional footage of him reuniting with his son. Extraordinary, really, very, very powerful stuff. And then the one, I have to say this one is the one that just really did me in. And I have to say, we were invited by Jewish friends to a lot of high holidays recently. And, it was very prayerful, very, very powerful times we've had. And during some of the prayers, this was before the hostages got out, the one picture in my head I had was of this guy, Rom Braslavsky, which a lot of people will know this, and I call him the crying hostage, who they made a video of him looking in a camera, and he had to speak, and he was just crying. He was at death's door. You could see him there. Really, really horrific. 21 years old, he had endured 738 days in captivity after being taken from the Nova Festival. But now he's back. He's finally. And so here's some footage of him. You can see him there with the IDF, and also pictures of him with his family. Just really, really powerful.
Yeah. And then there was Yosef Chaim Ohana. And I want to say to all the hostages and family members, if we're mispronouncing your names, please
forgive us.
Please forgive us as a people ourselves who have some weird names.
Yes, yes.
We are sensitive to the mispronunciations. Yes. But anyway, Yosef Chaim Ohana, he was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. He was going there to celebrate a trip to America where he was going to take a pilot's course. He was a medic, a battle medic in the IDF part-time, and he was providing attention to the wounded partygoers when he was kidnapped. This is footage of Yosef being reunited with his father.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. יוסף חיים, חיים שלי, האור שלי, הלב שלי, הלב שלי, הלב שלי. די, זה מאחורינו כבר.
And then the last one that I want to look at is this one with Aviantin Ori, which, again, I chose this because I thought, a lot of people would remember seeing his girlfriend, Noah Argamani, and there's the footage of her being separated from him and she was all herself taken into captivity. 246 days, extraordinary. Look at her, and there's the two of them reunited again, finally, after all this time. But, there's so many of these stories. Each one of them is extraordinary in its own way, but obviously these ones where there is this footage, particularly of the kind of the before and the after. I mean, these are haunting images that people will be left with forever. But we are, now looking at what may be a peace in the Middle East. We're certainly hoping for that, but there's some worrying signs.
It's an imperfect peace, but all peaces are imperfect, as someone who lived through a peace process in Northern Ireland. And a lot of bad choices have to be made. They had to release 1,900 prisoners. They had to release thousands of prisoners in Northern Ireland too early, and still are releasing them early.
Yes.
The idea was that Hamas would be destroyed. Hamas has not been destroyed.
No, and there's lots of footage of them still armed, and basically retaking the streets, retaking control of the area. Now, I think
exacting revenge.
And I think exacting revenge. I think the IDF have control of about half of Gaza, but it's still it's a wait and see situation. But Trump obviously is looking very heroic, and I thought it was extraordinary that this guy who's like in his 70s had flown across, like just dropped everything, went across to Israel, and then like 2 hours after being in Israel, gets on a plane and goes to Egypt. To continue to the phase 2 of the deal. By the time you're watching this, things will have even moved on further.
Yeah. But as we say, it's not a perfect peace. It's a worrying peace. Hamas, probably, have they learned their lesson? Maybe they learned a lesson. A massacre of 1,200 Jews in the world supports you. Is that the lesson they've learned? That's the lesson we've taught them? Let's hope not. But let's also enjoy the moment as well. Yeah. So talking of enjoying the moment, and
talking of happy and helpful and exciting and good moments, I thought we had to bring this to you. So you will remember that we have two cats, Top Cat and Scaredy Cat. Here's a photograph of the first time we ever got them when we came back from Christmas. And our assistant, who had basically had a little kitten, and we fell in love with her little kitten. She said, "Oh, my little kitten has two brothers." Yes. Anyway, we got the two brothers, and we couldn't find them in the house when we arrived back from Christmas. And the next thing we found them, the two of them in a sink because they were so tiny and scared. And we called them Top Cat and Scaredy Cat.
That's correct.
Move on 8 years.
Yes. So move on. We are outside of LA at a little mini vacation, and you get a notice on a WhatsApp group saying, of a neighborhood WhatsApp
of our neighborhood watch
a few streets away, saying,
oh dear, there is a dead cat in our alleyway. It's grey with a white face, and it's very sad, and it's got a puncture wound on its neck." And I just read it quite calmly because I thought, well, that doesn't sound like any cat of ours. My husband, however, did not think that.
Investigative journalist Phelim McAleer, I seem to remember it says grey and black, and I was thinking, grey and black, would that be another way of describing tabby?
Oh dear.
So I DM'd
the woman who had sent this message.
I said, is it a tabby cat? And she wrote, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Could you take a picture of the
aforementioned dead body?"
And she did. And there it was, Top Cat.
So Phelim did not tell me, and we were about 3.5 hours away from home. So we drove back. I could tell that Phelim was spending a lot of time on the phone, but he's always on the phone, so I didn't really pay attention. We got back after the long...
My wife was also making jokes. If people were phoning, she's going, "We're just heading home to see the cats, if they're still alive, if they forgive us."
My husband wasn't laughing very much, but I didn't realize.
I was texting friends saying, "Please be available for counselling services because we have a dead cat." So we got back. I then had to invent a story to leave the house.
And I was really sick, so I've had a cold. As you can probably hear, I still have that cold. So I'm like in bed. Phelim comes back and says to me, "I have bad news. Top Cat is dead." And I have to say, I was in bits, and I cried, and it was incredibly sad. Our friends came over. A friend of ours made chicken soup, brought over lovely flowers. People were writing the nicest things about Top Cat. Here's loads of photographs of Top Cat. And Top Cat's a really good cat.
Let's put some video.
And I used him to be what?
I've got some video of Top Cat.
And video of Top Cat is such a nice video.
And just to let people know, just to be clear, Anne has favourites. Anne?
No, actually, this is actually an incorrect way of saying it. Top Cat likes me an awful lot more than Scaredy Cat likes me. And by the way, I've worked out something in life. It's a really incredible piece of wisdom here. People tend to love being loved. Look at that for an unusual thing. So that cat really loves me. So anyway, let's just put it this way. I am completely distraught. I'm sick as well with the cold. And then on top of that, my cat that loved me, that chose me, has died.
In a brutal
fashion. And so I'm sitting on the couch.
There's a guilt element to it.
And we went away for the
left
weekend.
them alone for 2 days.
Oh, they had been fed, and our very good friend had come and fed them. They had fed them water. Long story, we're sitting there on the couch, and what happens? The flap opens, and Top Cat walks in. My mother used to say, the dead arose and appeared to many. So the cat is alive, and I have to say, this reveals a lot of things about humans. I have to say, the dead body of the other cat, by the way, was in our yard. I hadn't looked at the dead body. I was building up to looking at the dead body. Then, of course, I looked at the dead body and I was like, whatever. Which doesn't make me sound very nice. And then the poor lady who had found the cat in the alley realised through conversations with her friends that her friends who had been at a wedding, that their cat hadn't come home. And so it was their cat. So then that lady came over with the man to pick up the dead body. And I'm sitting in the garage with Top Cat sitting on my lap.
When the man walks in.
We're
going over now to the interview we did earlier with Robert Bryce. Robert Bryce is a world expert on energy.
Yes.
I mean, he has so many qualifications, written so many books, made so many documentaries. Really, he's Robert Bryce.
And we recommend people, if you ever got a question about energy, if anything's going on with energy, honestly, subscribe to Robert's Substack. It is absolutely brilliant, and he's always up to date on all the stories. Really, really great.
So let's go over. We wanted to talk about the latest. I mean, there's so much to talk about, the latest energy incident. So let's go over to that interview now. Well, hello, Robert. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Robert. Welcome.
Hi, y'all.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. We could have you on every week, I suppose, on the show.
There's a lot of news.
Energy is a big story, and there's our organization is called the Unreported Story Society. There's so many unreported stories in energy. There's the data center story, which we'd like to talk about later on, but let's talk now
about the news story, the breaking news story, right?
Yeah, the rare earth story.
Yes.
Which, as we're recording this, there's hostages have just been released in Israel. But last week, there was a massive drop in the stock market. And the reason for that was because there was a renewed tariff war when China decided to strangle America's ability to get hold of rare earth. Now,
yeah, let's go back first of all and ask the question, what is rare earth, and is it rare at all?
And why is it important, and why is it bad that China has so much of it?
Sure. Well, I think the easiest way to understand this is just that the U.S. has sleepwalked into an industrial supply chain disaster. I mean, I'm for free markets, free people, capitalism, but when it comes to this supply of rare earth elements, which are, if you're familiar with your periodic table, it shapes a U. Well, in all of those presentations, there are two lines below, or two rows of elements that are below the big U. It's the top line of the lower two lines. So dysprosium, lanthanum, dysprosium, neodymium, samarium, yttrium, gadolinium. These are all highly conductive. They're very important because they are important for magnetism, for phosphorescence, and they're used in a wide variety of consumer products. And in particular, they're important for defense. So jet fighter planes, missiles, all kinds of airplanes, submarines depend on these rare earth elements. And China controls roughly, depending on which part of the market you're talking about, 90% of the global market for magnets, high strength magnets, neodymium, iron, boron magnets. and they control essentially 100% of the market for heavy rare earths, in particular dysprosium and terbium. So these are incredibly important, and the U.S. hasn't been producing any of them. And just last Thursday, the Ministry of Commerce in China effectively declared a global embargo. I mean, it amounts effectively to that, but particularly for any defense-related application. So this is incredibly important. The U.S. doesn't have any quick ways to deal with it. Sure.
So that global embargo triggered retaliatory tariffs from Trump, which led to the stock market collapse. But I just want to go back a little bit and bring people back. You say China controls 90%, China controls 100% of the other metals. Is that because they're only found in China, that America doesn't have any of them, that Europe doesn't have any of them? So there's this rare earth, these elements that are only found in this one geographical place called China. Is that correct?
That's not correct. And but what is correct, you're close there, Phelim, but what China has done is agree to take the environmental hit, the cost hit on refining these rare earth elements and other strategic elements, including copper. Copper is relatively abundant globally, but since 2000, half of the new smelting capacity for copper has been built in China. But we can go down the line, whether it's tungsten or many other elements that have strategic applications. Antimony is another, found in batteries and in lead bullets. China has, over the course of the last 3 decades, really since Deng Xiaoping's declaration in 1992, they have focused on controlling the global supply of these elements. And now they have us by the rare earth short hairs, as I said in my piece.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But I really want to dig into this, because this is, I think, the really important thing. So the rare earth isn't rare. So it's in other places as well, including in America. But the unwillingness here to process it, to mine it and process it, is based on impossible environmental regulation. Is that correct?
It's a big issue. That's a big reason why, yes. And mining in the U.S. has been dwindling. We haven't been mining our own resources. And I mean, if we cut to the end, as my brother Wally likes to say, start at the end. Well, what has to happen now, given where we are? Because the rare earths aren't just important for defense, aren't just important for your car battery. They're important for the nuclear sector. So there are several, gadolinium is one of them, yttrium is another, dysprosium are used in nuclear energy. So nuclear energy production inside reactors. So we have to get the U.S. has to get serious and right damn quick, because we've left ourselves vulnerable to the Chinese, and now they're squeezing us, and not just us, but the rest of the world. And we have to start mining again. We're going to have to start refining again, and it's going to require a lot of government investment and a lot of government involvement. And there's going to be a lot of pushback on it. But this is what we have to do.
So let me just try and spell it out. The U.S. has made a choice not to mine its rare earth, not to mine lots of elements like copper or reduce mining, and not start new mines. They've made a choice. Now, it may not have been a deliberate choice, but they've introduced so many regulations that they've come to this agreement, or the establishment or whoever it is have said, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. That meant China could do it. And as you say, because the US made that choice, the deep state or whoever is in control, they've left us vulnerable to China just saying, we're not going to send that. And what, so is that right? There was a choice made and this is the result of it. And what are the consequences for these embargoes? If China was to stop exporting these elements, what's going to stop? What's going to collapse?
Well, let's start with defense applications, whether it's fighter jets, as I mentioned, missiles, submarines, warships. They all depend on significant quantities of rare earth elements for guidance systems, for radar systems, for munitions, and not just munitions, other strategic elements like antimony. So it is incredibly important that we figure out a way forward. I think the way, again, so what needs to happen? Well, you know, I disagree with Trump on a lot of things. I will say, you know, the Hamas deal is incredible. I mean, if it holds, let's, you know, God willing, and the
Yes.
creek don't rise.
Yes.
But his sentiments on the energy front have been exactly right. So, but now this issue around rare earths and strategic elements, so they're called them critical minerals, which is the wrong term. But around these strategic elements, the U.S. now, Trump needs to go to the Japanese, the Aussies, the Canadians, the Portuguese, where we get a lot of tungsten, our allies, and say, okay, look, we have to counter China and we have to work together, and we got to get started right now. And I was on a call this morning with Congressman Gary Palmer from Alabama. He said, we have about 5 years to solve this. And I think that's right. But it's going to require an enormous amount of money and strong commitment, bipartisan commitment from Congress. And we got to get going. I mean, we got to get off the dime. This is an incredibly important issue.
So why does it require government money? I mean, if they're that valuable and they're that important, surely private capital, does it not require the government to get out of the way, the government to maybe give tax credits for research and development and cheaper loans? But I'm not understanding why government involvement would be needed for the mining industry. Lack of government involvement would be required, no?
Well, and that's a fair question, but so let's just do a hypothetical. Let's say you and Ann decide to go to Arizona and open, let's just say a copper mine, just to use a commodity that we're well familiar with.
Yes.
And the main competitor in that market is China. So you and Ann, you've got loads of money, as everyone knows, and you spend billions of dollars on this new copper mine.
Yes.
And copper today, I just checked, the price is selling for $5 a pound. Well, so let's say you get up and going and you start to bring your copper into the market, and China looks at you and says, you know, we don't much like competition. We're going to cut our price to $2. Well, you built your financials around a $5 price or a $4 price or even a $3 price. This is what China has done repeatedly. They have a mercantilist attitude toward these markets. They control the overwhelming share, and so they will declare price wars on any new entrants. So that's why you're going to have strong government involvement, whether it's going to be long-term price supports or off-take agreements. The congressman said there are going to be, what do you say, subsidies and tax credits, tax incentives. All of it has to be on the table. And yeah, I'm for free markets, but when it comes to certain strategic industries, and I would argue nuclear energy is another one of them.
Yes.
You just have to have the government behind you. You can't just say let the market prevail, because that's what we've done, and that's what got us into this.
It's interesting, actually. You mentioned nuclear, and actually, I want to segue from that into the other massive question we have, which is about the whole energy picture, which is extraordinary. I mean, one example that we became very conscious of in Ireland during the summer was. And you'll probably correct me, but I believe Ireland, obviously, we're delighted with ourselves. We've got all these data centers in Ireland. We're all excited about the technology. Fantastic. It turns out that now, I think it's almost a quarter of all the electricity in Ireland, of all of it, is going to these data centers.
Wow.
How big of an issue is the energy demands of technology, of AI, and of data centers? What kind of pressure is that putting? And what kind of demand is that looking like going forward?
And obviously, it'll all be solved by solar and wind power.
Yeah, right.
You cynic, Phelim. Josh Fox is going to ride to the rescue and
yes, with a windmill.
Make sure that. Well, okay. So let me just give you a couple of quick numbers. So earlier this year, the EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute, estimated that by 2030, AI in the U.S. alone will require 50 gigawatts of power. What's 50 gigawatts? Okay, so I live in Austin, Texas. The Austin Energy is our utility. They have about 4 gigawatts of capacity. Or look at Pennsylvania, which has about 13 million residents. Pennsylvania as a whole has about 49 or 50 gigawatts of generation capacity. So AI alone, according to EPRI and their projections, will require as much power as the state of Pennsylvania in 5 years. So these are just very, very large numbers. And the only way to meet that power demand in the next 5-year term. It's the AI as a gas story. It's all going to be about gas because solar and wind and unicorn farts aren't going to ride to the rescue.
But I also think, and I think you're a fan, I think nuclear is also going to have to be part of that picture. Is that correct?
Well, I think over the long term, and I'm adamantly pro-nuclear. I've been saying the same thing for 15 years, end to end, natural gas to nuclear. Natural gas is here. Natural gas is going to be the fuel that drives AI growth in the U.S. for the foreseeable future, and by that I mean at least the next 5 years. Will nuclear small modular reactors come into the market? Yes, but remember, as with rare earths, we didn't get into this situation in a day or a year or 2 years. It happened over decades. So the nuclear comeback is I think in the U.S. is happening, but the Russians and the Chinese are way ahead of us, and in both nuclear in all forms of nuclear deployment, including SMRs. So it's going to take, again, sustained government support. It's going to take bipartisan support from Congress. And it will take, I would guess, for the U.S. to deploy even 10 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity, we're probably talking about 10 years.
Yeah. It's funny. It just struck me there, after the Second World War, the Russians and the Chinese and that spent enormous resources trying to steal America's nuclear secrets. All the spies and all that, and we're successful. It's got to the stage now where America will have to go and steal Russia and China's nuclear secrets because they're so far ahead. I'm kind of joking, but I'm not really. I mean, because as you're saying, they're leaps and bounds ahead of us. I mean, and when you
it's more. I would argue that it's more political on their behalf, that they're politically way ahead. That they've decided we're doing this. We are doing this, whereas America has decided we're not doing this.
I think I remember we discussed it the weekend though. When you do things, you get inventive. You see problems, you solve them. Yeah. The Americans aren't out there trying to build. When you try and build things, you get better. And that's what people said. Oh, if we just let China make all our stuff, we'll be inventive over here. It's when you're on the factory floor, I think, is when you get inventive. And I mean, I'm joking there, but is China technologically ahead of America, or is it still the same?
Well, I'd argue, Phelim, and I take your point, but I don't know that the U.S. needs to steal anything from anybody. We just got to freaking get on with it.
Yeah.
We have to. I just made a short documentary I posted on my Substack, robertbryce.substack.com, called Shrinking Fission about SMRs. And we went to a company here in Austin. My daughter Mary and I worked on it together 7 minutes. But we looked at a company called Allo Atomics, AALO. They've raised $130 million. They're fabricating reactor vessels in a factory between, just 5 miles from my house. So there are things that are moving. And you have, I created a compendium with my son Jacob called SMR Intelligence US. There's more than 24 companies now in the U.S. that are trying to develop these technologies, but it's going to take time. And I'm not sure which chemistry is going to be the right one, whether it's molten salt, whether it's gas cooled or water cooled. There are a lot of promising technologies, but while we're talking about it, the Russians have built a power ship. It's been deployed in Siberia. They're building 4 more power ships right now using reactors that they've already deployed on icebreakers. The Chinese have built a gas-cooled reactor in Shandong province. We got to quit talking about it and freaking do it. And we got to get on with it right damn now.
Yeah. So I think we three would definitely probably all agree that we're very confident and happy, by the way, very, very pleased that Chris Wright is in the position that he's in. So he is the Secretary of Energy. I think that's the correct term. What's he saying and what's he doing and what's changed since he took over?
What's changed at the DOE? Holy cow. I mean, a sea change unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, it's a U-turn for the ages. He got rid of the ideologues and like I said, I have plenty of criticisms of how President Trump does things, but on the energy front, he has been, pretty much everything he has done, I'm 100% in agreement with.
Right.
Cancel all this offshore wind silliness, get serious about domestic production, get serious about providing more power for AI because it's a national security imperative. And his announcement, I think it was in August, 4 different executive orders that were issued in one day. And I think, I know Secretary Burgum was there. I don't think Secretary Wright was at the meeting in the White House, but those 4 executive orders on accelerating the deployment of nuclear power in the U.S. were the most important statements by a sitting U.S. president since Eisenhower's Atoms for Peace speech in 1953. So, I have a lot of respect for Chris Wright. I've known him for a good while. I consider him, we're friendly, and I admire him enormously. And I think he's just doing a fantastic job.
Did I see something that they're actually going to talk about coal as well? Is coal coming back into the picture?
Well, I think the key is to let coal not get out of the picture, or to prevent coal from leaving. We have still in the U.S. about 190 gigawatts of installed coal capacity. China, by the way, is building 225 gigawatts, right? More than the existing coal fleet in the U.S. So I'm adamantly pro-nuclear, I'm adamantly pro-natural gas. We cannot afford to be solely dependent on, or rather, I will say it this way: we're becoming too dependent on gas overall as a power fuel, as a fuel for our power sector. We need to keep our coal plants open and operating because they provide us with energy diversity, and energy diversity means energy security.
Yeah.
But have the environmentalists taken on board the fact that we are, that there's no way that the wind-dependent energy sources like nuclear, like solar, and like wind, have they taken on board the fact that can't meet the demand? And are they getting even slightly more realistic, or is that ludicrous of me to suggest?
Oh, aren't you cute? And you just are so dear. You just fell off the turnip truck, isn't it? It's just funny.
I just think that they might be open to learning. No.
Well, okay.
No.
All right. I could make fun of the Sierra Clubbers. I don't like those people. I'm a longtime critic of the wind business. I really don't like those people. But the facts are clear that the wind industry and the deployments of wind, both in the U.S. and globally, are plateauing. Why? Because the pushback, and I've documented this in the Renewable Rejection Database on my website, robertbryce.com. There now have been over 1,100 rejections of wind or solar globally since 2015. And you all will appreciate this. And wind in particular is unwelcome in locations all over the world. We're seeing far more solar deployments now than wind. But just since January 1st, and all of it documented in the Renewable Rejection Database, just since the 1st of this year, in England, Ireland, and Scotland, there have been 45 rejections of wind or solar projects.
Wow.
And they're particularly inflamed in your home country of Ireland. I mean, where the locals are just saying, take these solar panels and wind turbines, put them where the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow. We don't want them here.
Yeah. No, that's kind of good news. I think we've kind of come to the end.
I have a radical suggestion.
Yes.
I mean, what's to stop? Is there anything to stop, say, President Trump declaring a national emergency, a proper national emergency, and saying we need to start mining rare earths? So I'm suspending federal environment regulations, and I'm overriding local environmental regulations.
Could that happen?
To dig a big hole in the ground for national security purposes. Is that possible, or?
Oh, I certainly think it is possible. And if this trade war continues and China's embargo on these rare earths continues, I think, I think it may be something he will have to do. Yeah. Because the imperative here, the danger here is very obvious, that if our Defense Department, our weapons producers cannot produce enough munitions, enough missiles, enough other kit, then we don't have a choice. So, but I think it's wrong to think that, I think the U.S. will have to act in concert with key allies, Australia and Canada being among the ones that are the most resource rich, most friendly, most ready to do deals. And Trump just needs to stop slapping them around for a little while and say, hey, we gotta cooperate here.
Yeah, that's always a challenge. And he could do that, I'm sure. Okay, yeah. I think we've come. Do you have another question? I think
that's good.
I think
good.
This is great.
So Robert, where can people find you?
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm on Substack. I write almost exclusively on Substack, although I have a piece coming out on Gavin Newsom in The Spectator. I just finished that piece coming out soon. But your home governor there in California, Governor Goodhair. Yes, robertbryce.substack.com. I write almost exclusively now on Substack, robertbryce.substack.com.
And we can find the short video that you've just done, the documentary you've made. We can find that in the same spot.
That's right. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. We look forward to that. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Really appreciate it.
It's always my pleasure, y'all. Take care.
Thank you. So As always, Robert is brilliant. We could have talked to him for 2 hours, by the way. He's absolutely extraordinary. But there's a lot to unpack there. But I think the big thing that he's saying is it looks very likely that the Trump administration is going to have to take some executive order in order not to have America completely dependent on China deciding overnight that actually, you know what, we want all our money back and we're going to cut off your supply of rare earth, which would just stop about everything. But I think the point that Robert made, actually, the really important one, is how important it is strategically, and not just for solar panels, but actually for defense. And that is very, very serious for America to be that vulnerable to China. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. The environmentalists talk about 5 years to save the world. There's actually 5 years to save America from being strangled to death by China, defensively, computer-wise, electricity-wise, energy-wise. So hopefully, let's go to Robert Bryce's Substack for all those answers.
We're moving on. We have the best recipe ever. Butternut squash soup. It's getting to fall time. This is a beautiful, beautiful recipe with ginger, with coconut. Yum, 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 yum. Very easy to make. I'll play that video right now and have a look at that.
Well, let's play that video and let's see it now.
And so basically we have a really nice, we highly recommend this recipe, which is I'm going to call it magnificent butternut squash soup. And I don't think butternut squashes can do anything wrong. I just love them. This recipe called for you, and you can see what we did there. We cut this butternut squash in two and put it into a very hot oven at 375. I would go actually to 400 with that. And we left it in for about 50 minutes. Not long enough. It needs to be left in for longer. And actually, I've been looking at other people's notes, and I'm thinking that maybe what we would do in future is we'd chop that butternut squash up small and put it in on a baking tray with some oil and roast it off that way. I think it'd be more effective. Anyway, then what you do is you are going to do that, put that on while that's all happening. And as I said, it's going to take a really long time in the oven, particularly if you have it into two big pieces. Then heat a tablespoon of oil.
Took an awful long time, bro.
Awful long time. Add onion, garlic, ginger, and saute over a low heat until golden, about 8 to 10 minutes. So the onion, I actually, and literally, you can see what I'm doing there. I mean, I literally had a bit of a yellow onion, a bit of a red onion. I mean, the great thing about soup, by the way, is it's so forgiving. It's incredibly forgiving. I just love that about it. And again, great idea then. After you've got that and your squash, look at the squash. We took the squash out. I mean, we gave it, as I said, 50 minutes. It probably needed longer. And I think the next time I would do the other thing.
And you can de-seed it then?
Then look at us. We show you only a tiny bit of that because we did labour to scoop out the flesh. The idea is that the flesh should be very coming away very easily from the squash skin at that point. Anyway, we won't show you all the mess we made, but we got the squash in. Put that squash into the pot that you have the garlic and the onion and the ginger in. Throw that in. See what else we threw in there. We threw in an apple as well. Just very roughly chop the apple. A spoon of curry paste. I found some Madras curry paste that I had in a drawer here from whenever. Things never expire, by the way. Remind me, Phelim. I want to talk about expiry date.
Yeah, the whole food waste, the whole
nonsense.
The whole food waste movement.
I'll very quickly say that when we came home for Christmas to our house in Ireland, we discovered that a friend of mine years ago had given us a Christmas pudding from Harrods, no less. Harrods.
And that's the kind of people we roll with.
That's the kind of people we roll with. And on the box, it said that it died in August of 2020. Rubbish, says I, because I know my mother would have said rubbish. And we put it in and we heated it, and it was beyond magnificent. And we're both still alive.
The whole food waste movement is a leftist
if there isn't
ideology
moss growing on it. Is my ideology. If there isn't an actual moss growing on it, use your nose and use your common sense. There's an awful lot of alcohol in those Christmas puddings, which is a natural preservative. Moving on, back to our pot. We have the apple, with the squash, with the spoon of curry paste, a spoon of peanut butter. That's a little trick there now. I actually love that idea. A pint of stock. And I use chicken stock. A lot of people would use vegetable stock in this case. I nearly always like to use chicken stock. But
because you cook a lot of chickens.
If you have any vegans around, obviously you want to do vegetable stock there. And bring all of that to a simmer for 10 minutes until your apple is tender. And then get your immersion blender in there and blitz the hell out of that. And I can tell you, it is really nice. Now, you could dress it up, and you could dress it with coriander, or as you Americans like to say, cilantro, or you could give it a little swirl of cream. We served it undressed, naked, in fact. The soup was naked. The soup was naked. Look at us all dressed up. Sure, I'm even still wearing the apron. And I have to say, I really, really recommend it. Yummy, yummy, yummy soup. And you can write and complain to me if I've left anything out, but I will put the whole recipe up anyway, and it'll be on the recipe page on our website. Honestly, make that soup. It's fabulous.
I want to play out with a little medley, we did this to mark the hostages coming home. It's a little combination of the videos with some music, and it's a, you know, we're obviously worried about the future of Israel, the future of the Western civilization. But for now, let's just be happy with these people being returned to their family, and let's think about people like Hirsch Goldberg, Poland.
I think that's really important to mention, because we're obviously thinking of Hirsch Goldberg's family. We obviously were very friendly with Abby Poland, his aunt, but also his parents, Rachel and John. Extraordinary, and not only them, but look at thinking of the Bebas babies and the man, the father of those Bebas babies, and his wife. He lost his wife. He lost his 2 children who were murdered, and those people. And then also to think of all the people who are meeting the bodies that are being returned now from Gaza. Very, very tough stuff.
But let's leave on some joy.
Yeah.
But you know, obviously it's bittersweet for many people, but let's leave with that video. And thank you
for everyone who's helped us with the October 7 play, which we are not stopping getting out there.
Go to October7theplay.com to donate or to get more information. Thank you. Bye.